So today we're going to add and subtract negative fractions. So it's going to relate directly to what we've been doing with our integers. Remember, those are our whole numbers, both positive and negative. And it's going to relate obviously back to all of our fractions work. So it's basically going to combine everything we've done so far this year. So if you're really up to speed with your fractions and your positives and negatives, this will be pretty simple. If not, this could be a little difficult. Okay, so we still are going to follow the same rules that we always have with fractions. Okay, and we'll talk about those in a second. And we're also going to use all of our rules for adding and subtracting negative numbers. So I've given you some good steps here to think about, and so let's read through them quickly. So number one, we're going to convert subtraction to addition if it's needed. So anytime I see minus a negative, okay, I'm going to take care of that, just like we've been taught. You also can convert addition to subtraction if it makes the problem easier. Okay, so instead of adding a negative, if you wanted to make it subtraction of a positive, you could do that. And if you end up adding a positive and a negative, the best thing that you can do is convert the mixed numbers to improper fractions. Now, there's multiple strategies here that you could do instead of that, but that is a tried and true, it works every single time strategy. So why not really focus on that strategy, because it works every time. Now you may find some other ways to get around it, and that's perfectly fine, but this is the tried and true works every time way, so we're really going to focus on that. So number two, you must still have common denominators. So no matter what, we're always going to have to get common denominators. If we don't start with common denominators, then we're going to have to go find them. All right, number three, once you have fractions with common denominators, you're going to use your rules for adding and subtracting integers to evaluate the numerators. So what that means is once you get your denominators the same, you're going to look at the numerators and you're going to add them or subtract them like you normally would, but they're going to be positives and negatives. Okay, so our negative is going to kind of go with the numerator, and we're just going to use our rules that we've been talking about for the past week to add the numerators or subtract the numerators or whatever it is. So you'll see that in a second. And then you should always simplify your answers, of course. So let's start with number one. So number one, before I even worry about the fact that this is a mixed number and a mixed number, I see minus a negative. Okay, and I don't like minus when I have to deal with negatives. So I'm going to rewrite this. So remember, it's keep, change, or adding the opposite. So you must keep the first one the same. So we're not going to do anything to 2 2/3. And I want to change this to addition, which I'm allowed to do. But if I'm going to do that, then I also have to change this number. If all I do is change subtraction to addition, I'm going to get the wrong answer. So I have to keep, change, or add the opposite. And the opposite of negative 3, if I change this, is positive 3 1/3. So now I've created a problem that is exactly the same as everything you've done your whole life. 2 2/3 plus 3 1/3. There's no negatives left. This is easy. There's common denominators. So add your whole numbers. That's 5. Add your fractions. You get 3/3. We should know 3/3 is 1. And so that 1 combines with the 5 and just gives us 6. So how easy is that? So if we can get rid of negatives altogether and make our lives easier, let's do it. Now, number two. This is addition, so I'm not going to change anything. Remember, we don't want to fall into that trap where we change every single problem. You only want to change subtraction to addition. We like addition, so let's not change anything. Now again, examine this just in terms of the positives and negatives. Forget the fractions for a second. Don't let them intimidate you. So we're adding a negative and a negative. Think about when you add negative 10 plus negative 3. When you add negatives, you get more negatives. So when I add these together, I'm just adding the numbers. Like I added the 10 and the 3 to get 13, and then I just knew my answer was negative. It's the same thing here. I'm just going to add these two numbers together, and then I know my answer has to be negative. So my answer is going to be negative, and if I added 1/3 and 3 1/3, well, I'm going to have the whole number 3, and the 1/3 and the 1/3 is 2/3. And I'm done. Okay, so a negative plus a negative, just combine them like you always would, and your answer is just negative. All right, so they're not all going to be this easy, right? Those seem pretty simple. So let's look at number 3. First of all, As soon as I see minus and negative, I'm going plus, plus. Okay, and I think it helps to rewrite the problem. So negative 3.5, I don't do anything with that one, right? Never change the first one. I'm going to change subtraction to addition. I'm going to change a negative to a positive. So the second number has to change. Now, I'm adding a negative and a positive. So what I'm really doing is subtracting, because they're going to cancel each other out. Think about if it's negative 10 plus positive 3. Okay, the answer is negative 7. Okay, because what did I do? I subtracted these to get the 7, and then I looked and saw whichever number had the greater absolute value, which was this, the 10 is bigger than the 3, so the negative is going to be on our answer. So basically whichever one you start with more of. So if you just look quick here at these two numbers, 3.5 is bigger than 3/2. So since I have more negatives than positives, I already know my answer is going to be negative. I don't know what it is yet, but I know that that answer is going to be a negative answer. So the easiest thing to do here now, if you're going to try and cancel these out, you're going to try and subtract these two, or whatever it is you're going to need to do, is to turn this into an improper fraction. So real quick, remember you multiply these two numbers and add it to the top. So 3 times 2 is 6, plus the 1 is 7. So this is negative 7 over 2 plus 3 over 2. So when you get here, notice that I took this negative that was in front and I put it on the numerator, because once you get the denominators the same, the denominator is just going to stay there. And you want to worry about your numerators. So you're not adding just 7 plus 3, you're adding a negative 7. So since this negative was in front of this mixed number, I'm going to kind of contribute it here to the numerator so that when I put these together, I remember that this is a negative number. So negative 7 plus 3, that's negative 4. Right? 3 positives cancel 3 negatives. I'm left with 4 negatives. And then I would simplify this answer. So my final answer here is negative 2. I can put it up here because that's what I was doing up there. All right, number 4. First thing I notice is it's subtraction. The next thing I notice is I don't have common denominators. So let's go ahead and get some common denominators. So these you can multiply times each other and make them 6. So 3 times the 3, I get 9 over here, and 2 times the 4, I get 8 over here. Now I need to make sure I bring everything down correctly. So this is negative, and I never changed the first one, so it will stay negative. And now really, this is going to be a minus, but let's go ahead and keep change. So I keep this one negative. I change this to addition, and this was a positive, so I can't leave it positive. This becomes a negative. Okay, so I kept the first one, changed to addition, changed a positive to a negative. All right, now it's pretty simple. Denominator is 6, so it goes to my answer. And I'm adding negatives plus negatives. So I get more negatives. So negative 8 plus negative 9 is negative 17. And if I want to simplify this answer, it's negative. 6 goes into 17 2 times. That puts me at 12. I am going to have a remainder. And so we leave it in terms of 6 like it was. And if I took 6 twice, I'm at 12. So to get to 17, there are 5 left over. So here's my answer. All right, number 5. What happens when I have a whole number? So just like before, you kind of want to put this over 1, and you could go get some common denominators. So let's make this a 4. That's really easy to do. We can leave this fraction alone. And let's make this a 4. So if I made this a 4, I multiplied by 4, so I have to multiply by 4 up here, so I get negative 8. Common denominators are good to go. All I have to do is add the numerators. Negative 8 plus 3, that's negative 5. It's done. Just need to simplify. So it's a negative answer. Don't forget to bring the negative along. 4 goes into 5 one time with 1 left over. Okay, number 6. Whole number, put it over 1. Let's get some common denominators. So we're going to make this a 3. We're going to leave this one alone because the denominator was already 3. So don't put 1 over 3. This needs to be 1 whole, which is 3 over 3. I multiplied both the numerator and the denominator by 3. So 1 became 3 over 3, and I'm minusing. So denominator's 3, and now I'm doing 3 minus 5. So I know 5 minus 3 is 2, so 3 minus 5 is negative 2. So my answer here is just negative 2/3. Now you could have done keep, change, change. So you would have kept this a 3, made this a plus, and this would be a negative 5. And 3 plus negative 5 is also negative 2. So whichever strategy you chose to use there, perfectly fine. All right, let's jump to the last question that we're going to do together. We're not even going to worry about number 8. We're just going to do number 7. So I see subtraction, and I see things that don't have common denominators, and I notice that these are mixed numbers. So really, I want to get rid of those. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change these into fractions. So let's keep everything the same so far. 3 times 2 is 6. Add 1, it's 7 over 2. 4 times 2 is 8. Plus the 3, it's 11 over 4. All right, so this is really my problem. Now, let's get common denominators. So I'm going to leave this one the same. And I'm going to make the first one into a 4. Don't forget to bring down your negative. So what did I multiply by? Okay, I multiplied this by 2. So I need to multiply this by 2. So this is 14. So now I know my final answer should have fourths as the denominator. And I'm going to do negative 14, and I'm going to minus 11. So be careful. It's not negative 3. That might be your first instinct. So negative 14, let's change it. Change to addition. Change this to a negative. So really, it's a negative plus a negative. Well, that gives me a whole bunch of negatives. So that's negative 25. And 4 goes into 25 6 times, because that puts me at 24. It's a negative 6. And my remainder here, as my pen runs out of ink, is going to be in fourths, and there should be just 1 left over. All right, so you have classwork on the back of this. We're not even going to worry about number 8. It's just like number 7. It's just like number 6. It's just like the rest of them. So you're going to turn to the back. You're going to do your classwork. And there's about 6 problems back there. The answers are not on the Weebly page. The answers are going to be on the sideboard. You need to show your work. Okay, the teacher's going to be looking for your work, and you need to check your answers and make sure they're right. If they're not right, get some help from a partner, get some help from the teacher. Okay, look back at these notes and see if you can compare it to one of these. Once you get it all done, then you can get your homework, but don't move on to your homework until you really have a good hold on those 6 problems.